Let's talk about the commodity space as well. Just a quick update on that. To remember, aside of what's happening to trade fears, oil has gone up a bit and gold has risen, maybe due to the fears of an impending trade war, which has kick-started in a meaningful way already. So let's get in David Lennox to speak about his thoughts on what all of these could do to the commodity pack by and large. David, good morning. Thank you so much for joining in. It all started with a couple of commodities. Now it's gone on to a bunch of other products as well. What does this do, David, to commodities? By and large, the global metal space had risen because global trade was booming. There was free resource movement. Does all of that come into question mark now?
Oh, good morning. Look, if you really only have to look at the overnight trading that we saw across the broad commodity spectrum. They were all, except for the energy space, in negative territory. So that would tend to suggest that the market's taken a very dim view of the announcement by Donald Trump to, in fact, impose that tariff on products coming into the US from China, and then certainly in relation to the IP. So from an overview, we would suggest that if you're looking at the actual announcement, he did start at the extreme, suggesting that, as he did with the aluminium and also steel, that they would start at the extreme. There would be no exemption. Everything that was coming out of China would fall into the tariffs in some way. But we now see some of the detail coming out, and there is some possibility for China to let's say, come and negotiate with the Trump administration. So we'll be watching very carefully the outcome of that. But one would suggest that, as we saw with the overnight trading prices, there's going to be, unfortunately, no winner when it comes to a trade war between two major economies such as China and the US.
Hi, David. Good morning. Well, the tariffs have been announced for commodities like steel and aluminium. Post it is implemented now, David, what's going to be the reaction with regard to prices globally for both these commodities?
That will be a bit of a strange event. We will see certainly steel prices inside the US will no doubt rise. The steel manufacturers there have to increase their prices to cover their cost bases. So unfortunately for the Americans, they're going to be paying a lot more for their steel. There will perhaps be somewhat of a glut, but not a significant amount of steel that will have to find its home away from the US that generally would have gone into that market post the announcement of tariffs. So one may see somewhat of a softening in the steel sector. But look, overall, the actual steel market and the US imports of steel from other countries is fairly small, so we wouldn't expect it to do too much. It will be, in fact, this new set of tariffs that Donald Trump has announced that is really going to cause the market some concern. And as I said, you saw that reflected in the overnight trading in the equity markets and the overnight trading in the commodities markets.
David, just one quick word on gold as well. It's risen a bit on account of these fears. Can it do more?
Look, one would have thought that with the turmoil that we're now probably going to see starting to ebb its way around the trading globe, that we would expect to have seen investors seeking out gold as more of a safe haven. That has occurred, but not to the same momentum that we would have been expecting to see. There has, in fact, been somewhat of a move back towards the US dollar, and we suspect back into US cash. So gold, it will continue to hold that safe haven characteristic while we're going through this period of turmoil. But the momentum has been somewhat choked, we think, because of investors actually looking to go back into the US dollar.
Very quickly, just last question. There was news that Saudi Arabia has said production curbs could now last till 2019 for crude oil. And we've seen the Brent crude oil prices now touching the mark of 70 as well. What's the outlook there? Can we see the prices going up to 75, 80 this year?
Look, certainly our end of year price for the Brent is at $74 to $78 by calendar year end. So yes, we're looking for that price to actually move higher over the course of this year. There is no doubt that when you have a look at what Saudi Arabia are doing, they do not want to see that oil price anywhere near $40 a barrel, because that hurt their social fabric, their social budgets, and it certainly did cause a social disruption through a number of the producing countries inside OPEC, and that they can't afford to, unfortunately, stand for. So they will endeavour to keep the oil price at least probably between $60 to $65, which does mean that those cuts, yes, they're going to stay in place probably beyond 2019, because what we'll see happen, US domestic production has been rising, and if the prices continue to rise on the oil front, then you'll see more of that happening. At the moment, it stands at 10.4 million barrels, but we could expect it to see now probably up to 10.6 to 10.7 million barrels. So that's going to keep a lid on, but the Saudis and a lot of the OPEC countries just can't afford to see an oil price below $40.